Namaste. I am extremely delighted to be here, and while we are all very closely following the landfall of the cyclone Amphan, and that on such a day you have invited me to speak on one of the greatest personalities of modern India, whose life itself was a cyclone. It was a life of cyclonic speed and of stormy proportions. Therefore, I am extremely honored to be able to speak on the life and times and contemporary relevance of Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, the creator of West Bengal and the savior of Jammu and Kashmir, and the protector of India's independence, India's unity, and India's integrity. But at the onset, I want to really thank and express my gratitude to all of you, to Dr. Saurabh Jha, and especially to the dynamic doctors, to the dynamic, dedicated, energetic, unparalleled doctors of the National Medicos Organization, the NMO, and the West Bengal chapter. Please accept my gratitude, my salute, and my reverence for your commitment, your energy, your courage, and your selflessness. And as I say these words, these are not only individual words, but these are words that represent, that express, that manifest the feelings of all of us Indians who are at this time of pandemic watching with great hope and watching with a great sense of being protected, your struggle as COVID warriors. And therefore, I once again express my gratitude for this great opportunity to speak to you. It's very difficult to really decide when one speaks of Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee's life from where to start. But let me say this much. Let me start with a very important doctor who partnered with him in very crucial times of his life, and that was Dr. B.C. Roy, the architect of as Chief Minister, the architect of West Bengal, and one of the greatest doctors, one of the greatest physicians that India has known in modern times. So it's very interesting if I draw a parallel that it was on 16th October 1942 that Midnapur was struck by a major cyclone. And it is said that some 30,000 people died in that cyclone. There was a great tidal wave, and large swathes of land of villages were swept away. Just before this was August 1942, and you must be knowing that Midnapur was one of the centers of revolutionaries, and it was one of the centers of Swadeshi resistance to the British administration. And in fact, it was Midnapur which had declared independence from the British in those days. Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee was the youngest finance minister in the government of Bengal, undivided Bengal at that point of time. It's a story which I will come to. He was part of the historic Shyama Haq ministry, which was formed by the Krishak Praja Party, the Hindu Mahasabha, and the Forward Bloc and some other parties, in order to keep the Muslim League out of power in Bengal. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee was at that time the finance minister of Bengal. And when the cyclone struck, in those days, connectivity being what it was, information about this huge cyclone, about the tidal wave, was suppressed by the British administration. The district magistrate of Midnapur suppressed all information, and he ensured that it was only the governor of Bengal who knew about it, and he advised the government, the governor of Bengal and the secretary, to ensure that no aid reached the district of Midnapur, because as per them it was a district where people had revolted. So can you imagine, a cyclone struck Midnapur, there was a huge tidal wave, about 30,000 people were swept away, and the British governor not only did not inform his ministers, not only did not inform the government, kept all the Indian ministers in dark, but deliberately refused to send aid, and he was holidaying in Darjeeling. Dr. Mukherjee, as soon as he came to know of this from his sources, rushed to Midnapur. He took stock of the situation. Despite great opposition, he rushed to Midnapur, took stock of the situation, and came back and insisted and worked to ensure that the first installment of aid, of relief, started reaching the region. By this time, his relationship with the British government, with the British governor and his secretaries had started souring, because, and Dr. Mukherjee had given the proposal that revolutionaries, freedom fighters who were imprisoned, they must be immediately released so that they can participate in the relief work. That was a very ingenious plea to ensure that the freedom fighters become free from British jails. Soon after, in November, Dr. Mukherjee resigned and he organized the Mednipur Relief Fund and Society. He himself became president of the society, and Dr. B.C. Roy became the treasurer. In those days, such a towering figure was Dr. Mukherjee that there was no political untouchability about what he said and about his politics. Dr. B.C. Roy, being a front-ranking Congress leader, joined hands with him in order to provide relief to the people of Midnapur. This was the cyclone bit of it. Later on in 1947, when partition was nearing and independence was nearing, and Dr. Mukherjee Dr. Mukherjee took the stand that if the whole of Bengal can't stay in India, if the whole of Bengal, if there is a plan afoot to send the whole of Bengal into Jinnah's Pakistan, then Bengal must be partitioned, because under no circumstances will the entire Bengal, if we cannot protect the entire Bengal, under no circumstances will the whole Bengal go to Jinnah's Pakistan. Dr. Mukherjee took a strong public stand. It was in April 1947 in Tarakeshwar in Hooghly that the stalwarts like Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, Barrister N.C. Chatterjee, Nirmal Chandra Chatterjee, who was a front-ranking leader of the Hindu Mahasabha, whose son was later the Speaker of the Lok Sabha and a very senior leader of the Communist Party of India, Marxist, who was expelled from the party, Somnath Chatterjee. So N.C. Chatterjee, Dr. Mukherjee brought in this resolution that if Bengal cannot be saved, if the whole of Bengal can't be retained in the Indian Union, the whole of Bengal will neither go to Pakistan. And therefore Bengal needs to be partitioned so that one portion of Bengal, those districts which were Hindu majority districts, can remain in India, and the Bengali Hindu can preserve, protect for perpetuity his culture, his way of life, his aspirations and his future and their future. And at the same time, we see at that moment when a section of the Muslim League and others were thinking of a united sovereign Bengal, when the Congress's central leadership was very ambivalent to this proposal, when the Muslim Leagues were opposing this proposal, when the Communist Party of India was opposing this proposal, the Communist Party of India's stand was that we don't want Bengal to be partitioned and we want the whole of Bengal to go to Pakistan. At this point of time, we see Dr. B.C. Roy and the entire Congress leadership under him in Bengal stand by Dr. Mukherjee. I'll come to that later, but it was Dr. B.C. Roy's support which was very crucial, because all the Congress, Hindu MLAs of Congress, of the Bengal Congress, supported Dr. Mukherjee's proposal. They supported his resolution for the partition of Bengal, and thus was West Bengal created. And thus, today, we still have that portion of land which we can call Bengal, which we can call our own, that portion of land which is completely integrated and is an integral part of India, that land which continues to retain its rich cultural legacy, that land towards in whose reawakening, revival, and regeneration lies the future prosperity, the future well-being, and the future march of a new India. So therefore, I thought it was extremely relevant that I mention one, the cyclone, and I mention Dr. B.C. Roy's role and contribution in standing by Dr. Mukherjee in some very difficult phases of our history. Friends, Dr. Mukherjee passed away at the age of 52. You know, and we shall come to that at the end, you know of his final and ultimate sacrifice in Jammu and Kashmir. And it is extremely, it's a tribute to him that last August, finally, Article 370 was abrogated. It was in demand of that abrogation, in demand of complete integration with India. It was in demand of complete unity of India that Dr. Mukherjee finally gave up his life in Srinagar as a prisoner of Free India's first government, in which once upon a time he was a minister led by Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. We shall come to that later. But it is a true tribute to him, to his legacy, and to his contribution that last August Article 370 was finally abrogated. And just 2 days ago, the Ministry of Home Affairs issued the certificate for domicile for the state, for the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. There shall be no difference, there shall be no more discrimination, there shall be no more unequal opportunities for those who live and those who would once live in the state, in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. This includes refugees from Western Pakistan who had come and settled in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. It is for all of them that Dr. Mukherjee in his last days has raised his voice in the Indian Parliament. It was for all of them that he ultimately gave himself up in Srinagar at the young age of 52. But it is very interesting to observe that by the age of 52, Dr. Mukherjee had achieved much more than many of us can think of achieving in a lifetime. He had become the Vice Chancellor of Calcutta University. He had emerged as a leading educationist and education thinker. There was not a single year when Dr. Mukherjee, till the last year of his life, did not deliver convocation addresses across India. He was a much sought after educationist. He became the youngest finance minister in the government of undivided Bengal at the age of 40. One of the youngest and most successful finance ministers. He became the creator of West Bengal. He was a member of the Constituent Assembly. He became the first Minister of Industry and Supply in Free India's first cabinet. He became the founder of the Bharatiya Janasangh, which was the predecessor of the Bharatiya Janata Party, later to become the ruling party of India once and now again. He gave an alternate political narrative. He set the tone, he set the path towards a new India in where there would be an alternate political narrative, a refreshingly new political narrative which would be contrary to the dominant Nehruvian consensus. And he became member of parliament in Free India's first Lok Sabha, one of the most successful parliamentarians, one of the most sought after parliamentarians, a leader who led the opposition without having an official tag of leader of the opposition, and ultimately he became the integrator of India, the protector of India's unity. All this at the age in just 52 years that he lived. And therefore, as I said, his was a stormy life, a cyclonic life, dedicated to India's greatness, dedicated to making India great, dedicated to ensuring that it was always India first, that it was India again, that it was India always. Let us start from the beginning. So we see that by his nature, Dr. Mukherjee was an educationist. He was an academician. And he had this flair for research, for education administration, for driving the wheels of a great university such as the Calcutta University. His father, Sir Ashutosh Mukherjee, was an equally well-known educationist and barrister. And it was at the age of 33 that Dr. Mukherjee became the Vice Chancellor of Calcutta University. And it was during his tenure that some of the fundamental reforms and changes took place in the university. He encouraged research in Indian history from the Indian point of view. He encouraged research in Indian science, in Indian agriculture, in technical education, in women's education, and he started a number of departments. He encouraged excavations. He started the first museum within the university where artifacts that were discovered could be showcased, artifacts that were excavated could be showcased there. This was a unique change that he brought about. He invited experts globally. He invited thinkers from across the world to come and associate themselves with the University of Calcutta. And more importantly for us, it was during his tenure in 1937 that he invited Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore to deliver the convocation address. Gurudev Tagore graciously agreed, but he had one condition, and that was that I shall deliver the convocation address if you allow me to deliver it in Bangla. And that was naturally conceded. Dr. Mukherjee himself was a great student. His master's was in Bengali, like his bachelor's was in English. He had an equal command over both English and Bengali. And it was at his father's behest that Dr. Mukherjee had taken up his master's in Bangla, because he wanted to make a point that Indian language and its traditions must be, Bharatiya Bhashas must be supported, must be strengthened, must be encouraged. And Gurudev Tagore came and delivered his lecture, his convocation address in Bangla. That was the first time in the history of the University of Kolkata that a personality, that someone delivered a convocation address in Bangla. I think that was the high point of his contribution to the spread of education, not only in Bengal but across the country. And we see since then, throughout his life, he delivered some of the most eloquent, some of the most inspiring, some of the most rich speeches, convocation addresses Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee delivered across the country. I would urge you to read his address to Banaras Hindu University, his address to Patna University, his address to Bombay University, his address to Gurukul Kangri University in Haridwar. In each convocation address, he not only brings up the potential of civilizational India, the glory of India, but he comes across as an educational visionary, an educational practitioner who has the future of India's education completely charted out before him. And therefore, as a tribute to him, last year Prime Minister Modi spoke of his life revolving around education, around economy, around industry, and around the overall well-being of India. Shilpa and Shiksha, this is what Prime Minister Modi had said. This was a phase and when he was deeply immersed in education. And then we see gradually Bengal, the situation in Bengal, the increasing development across the province, the majority and the grip of the Muslim League, their discriminatory politics, their communalization of education, the communalization of the government services, overall communalization of society. That is where Shyama Prasad Mukherjee decided, at the urging of many of those who came in touch with him, to take the plunge into public life. And we see that his meeting with Swatantra Veer Savarkar in Kolkata was another turning point in his life. Completely taken over by his youthful energy, by his zeal and by his magnetism, Veer Savarkarji invited him to join the Hindu Mahasabha. That was a major turning point in Dr. Mukherjee's life, because as working president of the Hindu Mahasabha first and then as president of the Hindu Mahasabha, he not only ensured that the Hindus of undivided Bengal, who were in a minority in those days, under Muslim League rule, were taken care of, that their way of life was protected, that their home and hearth and family and women were protected, that their future also was protected. Against great odds, Dr. Mukherjee undertook this Herculean task across Bengal of organizing the Hindus and of protecting them under Muslim League rule. Now the question is, there was this period when Bengal was passing through a very difficult and challenging phase. The Muslim League dominated, and the Pakistan resolution was passed in 1940, and we see with the passing of the Pakistan resolution in Lahore, increasing belligerence of the Muslim League, and that increasing belligerence was visible in its administration of Bengal. In every department, the Hindus were oppressed. The Bengali Hindus were treated as second-class citizens, as second-class people in a Bengal where for thousands of years they contributed to its richness in terms of culture, in terms of its overall growth. Now we see, very interestingly, the Pakistan resolution was, Jinnah very cleverly made it passed. He made Fazlul Haq, another famous Muslim leader from Bengal, pass the Pakistan resolution. But Fazlul Haq soon realized that he had merged his party, the Krishak Praja Party, which was a party of the Krishak and Prajas, a Muslim party, which never advocated partition, which rather had the welfare of Bengal at heart, and which was always opposed to the Muslim League. But during those days, somehow, Fazlul Haq was absorbed into the Muslim League. He merged his party, the Krishak Praja Party, into the Muslim League. He was one of the sponsors of the Pakistan resolution, and then soon Fazlul Haq realized that Jinnah had actually captivated his party and had completely decided to decimate him politically and completely make him powerless, so that Muslim League could in the long run dominate and control Bengal. Fazlul Haq disassociated himself with the Muslim League, and in parleys with Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, with Dr. Mukherjee and Sarat Chandra Bose, decided to form an alternative coalition which would have members from Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's forward bloc and Sarat Chandra Bose as a leading pusher of the idea. We see that the British could not checkmate that move, and they were bound, because the majority was with Fazlul Haq and with Dr. Mukherjee. They were bound to swear in that ministry, which became known as the Shyama Haq ministry. What was unique about this ministry? Because you will hear a lot of propaganda from communist circles and Congress circles, propaganda made by those with half knowledge or with no knowledge at all, that Dr. Mukherjee joined hands with the Muslim League to form a coalition in Bengal. Nothing far from the truth. Dr. Mukherjee joined hands with Fazlul Haq, who used to be known later on as Sher-e-Bangla, in order to stop the Muslim League from continuing with its rule over Bengal. And one of the supporters, one of the main brains behind that coalition was Sarat Chandra Bose and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's party, the Forward Bloc. And the Forward Bloc had ministers in the coalition as well. Sarat Chandra Bose was arrested on the eve of the swearing in and was sent in detention in Kodaikanal, far away. And it was left to Dr. Mukherjee and Fazlul Haq to run the ministry. This ministry, Dr. Mukherjee was part of the ministry from December 1941 to November 1942. One of the most successful ministers. During this entire period, Bengal saw not a single incidence of communal violence. And Dr. Mukherjee said that in order to protect ourselves, in order to protect our future, and in order to ward off forces of division as seen in the Muslim League and forces of division as seen in the British governor and the British administration, we have formed this coalition in order to show people that we can work together for our collective well-being and future and welfare. He had a completely partial approach as finance minister when it came to any community. And his successful financial schemes, his successful financial allocations made him one of the most dynamic ministers, besides being one of the youngest ministers, one of the most dynamic ministers of that coalition. And then, as I narrated to you, he resigned because after August 1942, he increasingly felt, before August 1942, before the August movement, he continuously told the governor of Bengal and the viceroy that there has to be an understanding which has to be reached. India's independence must be declared, and only then India's support can be enlisted in the fight against the Axis powers. A subject India one can never hope a subject India to fight the Axis powers in support of the British. A series of letters, series of public stance, series of dialogue, Dr. Mukherjee continued before August 1942 right up to November 1942. He could not prevent the British administration from unleashing oppression. He tried. He could not prevent the British administration from stopping relief to the cyclone hit district of Midnapur. Seeing all this, he took the decision within a few months to resign from the cabinet and wrote one of the most historic letters where he demanded complete and unconditional independence of India. Nothing else will stop. And along with this, we see how later on, in a few years' time, he took the lead in forming the INA Defense Committee in support of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose across the country, and to mobilize public opinion that the INA soldiers were not traitors, but they were patriots of the first rank. After his resignation from the cabinet, we see Dr. Mukherjee becoming extremely preoccupied with the Bengal famine. And let me tell you, it was one of the worst man-made famine that history has ever known. 3 million people are said to have died in the Bengal famine of 1942-43. The British followed a scorched earth policy, a policy of denial, where boats across Bengal were requisitioned, cycles were requisitioned. The peasant was the hardest hit. Existing stock of rice were burnt, and the entire stock of rice, of grains of the province of Bengal was sent away to England to feed the British army and the British population. Dr. Mukherjee undertook the largest non-official relief operation. And I would like to remind you here, I would like to myself remember the words of R.K. Dasgupta, one of the finest thinkers, and sometimes for many years the director of the National Library in Kolkata, who said that during that phase of 1942, when when the entire Congress leadership was in prison, when there was a complete suppression, when there was a complete crackdown on freedom fighters, it was the voice of Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee which stood out as a fearless voice of India's freedom, of the struggle for freedom, of India's struggle for freedom. Dr. Mukherjee organized the largest non-official relief operation during the Bengal famine, and every organization responded to him. Every organization, starting from the Ramakrishna Mission to the Bharat Sevashram Sangh to the Marwari Relief Society, you name it, organizations came forward heeding to his call in order to organize relief. The Muslim League government and the British governor, in the same manner as they did for the Midnapur cyclone, tried to suppress information about the Bengal famine relief. Dr. Mukherjee, in the assembly and outside the assembly, mobilized public opinion, ensured that information about this disastrous, about this heart-rending, unimaginable famine of humongous proportion went out across India. Information went out across India, and that relief poured in from across India as well. The Muslim League government made an half-hearted attempt to provide relief, but it came to notice that even in these relief camps, conversion activities were going on apace. We give you relief if you convert. Dr. Mukherjee exposed that, and throughout this feverish activity that he undertook during this period of famine relief, many have asked me, in times of such a pandemic, what would have Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee done? He would have been at the forefront. He would have been at the forefront with his tremendous power of organizing and taking people along. He would have been at the forefront in Bengal with his tremendous energy to drive relief operation. He would have been at the forefront in Bengal without any discrimination, without any calculation, selflessly doing what he always did, and that is being with the people by their side. So this is one of the most historic contributions during the Bengal famine that he did. Not only that, in order to educate people, he at the same time wrote a series of articles, well researched, well documented, well argued, on how the British brought about this famine and how they destroyed the Bengal peasantry and how 3 million people perished because of the deliberate scorching of Bengal. Very interestingly, a great economist who received from Bengal, who received the Nobel Prize in the past, never has once referred to Dr. Mukherjee's contribution both in terms of relief during the Bengal famine and his contribution in terms of explaining and bringing it forth before people. So this was one aspect of his life. Now we come to the next very crucial aspect, and that is the formation of West Bengal. And this was exactly in 1947. Soon it will be 75 years of the formation of West Bengal. Jinnah's demand for Pakistan was already made, and Jinnah wanted the whole of Bengal into his kitty. And therefore, once Shyama Prasad Mukherjee had told Nehru that you divided India, but I divided Pakistan. And I think that was so true, and that had so much historic truth in in that statement of his. And we see that it was in April, as I said, in Tarakeshwar, that the Hindu Mahasabha came out very clearly that if Bengal can't be saved, then we will not allow the whole of Bengal to go to Jinnah's Pakistan. And before that, on 19th March 1947, Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee issued a very strong statement where he said, and he said very, very categorically, because even today, the communists who supported Pakistan's resolution for partition, the communists who supported the formation of Pakistan, and the communists who wanted the whole of Bengal to go to Pakistan, even today say that Dr. Mukherjee divided Bengal and therefore he destroyed Bengal. So there is no difference between him and Lord Curzon. This is the argument that they give. And I think Dr. Mukherjee himself answered that argument in March 1947 when he said that, let me emphasize that Lord Curzon's partition and our demand for a new province are like poles asunder. The Curzon partition was aimed at giving a death blow to seditionist Bengali Hindus. Our present proposal for Hindu Bengal, on the other hand, is aimed at saving Bengali Hindus and also the cause of nationalism, which is their lifeblood. The majority of revolutionaries in Bengal, in undivided Bengal, were Bengali Hindus. They gave their life for India's freedom. Nationalism ran through their life, was their lifeblood. The newly proposed province, said Dr. Mukherjee, will have one language and 70% of its population will be Bengali Hindus. After all, the mere mention of the word partition need not throw us into a fainting fit. So he answered this question himself very clearly. Then he says, very categorically, in that statement, public statement which was a historic statement, it is said that creation of the new province supports the cause of Pakistan. This is an argument which the communist and the Congress, members of the Congress who have not read Dr. B.C. Roy, who have no idea of what Dr. B.C. Roy did for the future of Bengal, how he protected Bengalis, give this argument. Even that Dr. Mukherjee has answered. He says, we have demanded that both Hindu Bengal and Eastern Bengal must remain within one India. We are against Pakistan in any form or shape. Very clear. While the communists say they supported Pakistan and the Congress was ceding Pakistan, Dr. Mukherjee was very clear that we are against Pakistan in any form and shape. It does not, however, depend on Bengali Hindus alone whether division of India will be prevented or not. If Hindus and other nationalist forces throughout India are really determined not to allow any portion of India to go out of the Indian Union, they will get the largest measure of support from Bengali Hindus. Very clear. If, on the other hand, an attempt is made to place Bengal out of the Indian Union due to commitments with which the British government, the Muslim League and the Congress are closely associated, we shall at any rate break the solidarity of Eastern Pakistan, save one area of Bengal, and link it up with the Indian Union. I think he was extremely clear about what he wanted and what he wanted to do. And lastly, and I think this was his one of his finest points he made in that statement, if we find that the whole of Bengal is going to be dominated by communal frenzy and 45% of its population reduced to a state of slavery only because they follow a particular religious faith, is it a crime on our part to demand that we must have our own territory where we can live as free men and build up our own culture, our own social and economic life in accordance with our best tradition? Simple. In United Bengal and in the whole of Bengal, 45% of the population is a minority. Then why should we support that? I fail to see how, by allowing ourselves to remain as slaves under a communal Raj in a so-called United Bengal, we can advance the cause of nationalism or socialism. Because when the talk of partition of Bengal was going on, there was a group led by Surawardi and Sarat Chandra Bose, who later on turned to this idea that Bengal will not go to Pakistan, Bengal will not remain in India, Bengal will become a free and sovereign country. Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee was very clear that this was a bogus demand, this was a very dangerous demand which should never be conceded, and united sovereign Bengal will have the Hindus, the Bengali Hindus, in perpetual minority status, and in a couple of years that entire united sovereign Bengal will be swallowed up by Pakistan, because it would be dominated by the Muslim League and its cohorts. So therefore, we see that demand, that Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee's demand, began picking up, gathering steam. 50 jurists of the Calcutta High Court signs a public declaration that they support partition of Bengal. The who's who of Calcutta, of Bengal, one of the leading lights, opinion makers, intellectuals come forward. People like Sir Jadunath Sarkar, Ramesh R.C. Majumdar, Suniti Kumar Chatterjee, Kalidas Nag, Upendranath Banerjee, all come forward and say, yes, we support the demand for the partition of Bengal. At Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee's behest, the Bengal Partition League is formed. A special convention is organized, and they deliberate over a few days and come out in a joint declaration. The entire Bengali intelligentsia come out together and say that Bengal needs to be divided for the sake and future of the Bengali Hindus. And an opinion poll conducted by the Amrita Bazar Patrika in those days point out over 90% of people supporting over 90% Hindus supporting the partition of Bengal. And so we see in 1947 Punjab partitioned and Bengal partitioned, and we see the formation of West Bengal, a much smaller body, but at least a piece of land where the Bengali Hindu could live in security, could live with their head held high, could dream of a future, could preserve their way of life, way of worship, way of faith and belief, and could preserve their culture and hope for a brighter future completely integrated within India. And as Dr. Mukherjee had said, to strengthen the forces of nationalism within India. This was a partition and independence. So therefore, the question that once was asked was, had Dr. Mukherjee not been there, what would have happened? Had Dr. Mukherjee not been there, there would have been no West Bengal. The entire Bengal would have gone to Jinnah's Pakistan, and we would have never known, and perhaps the entire population of Bengali Hindus would have to eke out an existence as refugees. After independence, we see, at the behest of Mahatma Gandhi, at the eagerness of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar are included in the cabinet of the first cabinet of independent India. As industry and supply minister from August 1947 to April 1950, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee laid the foundation for India's industrialization. In fact, the first industrial policy of India's first industrial policy of 1948 was his creation, was largely based, primarily, majorly based on the direction that he gave. And we see him, on the one hand, completely alive to the need for India to be self-sufficient in heavy industries and major industries. We see him speaking about the need for defense indigenization. We see him taking up the mission of making many of the government-run industries viable. We see him laying the foundation and initiating locomotive, the Chittaranjan Loco Factory, which would soon churn out locomotives. We see him forming the Damodar Valley Corporation, the power generation Damodar Valley Corporation. At the same time, we see him laying the coming up with this roadmap for setting up fertilizer factories. We see him thinking of setting up steel plants. On the other hand, we see him also supporting a solid base for MSMEs, for micro industries. We see him supporting the matchmaking factories in South. We see him coming to the help and succor of the Punjab woolen industry, of the wool factory makers. So on the one hand, we see he had a large vision. On the other hand, we see him focusing on the micro vision as well. The cottage emporium, a solid base for the cottage industry, the need to have a centralized pooling of handicrafts that are produced by our artisans, the need for strengthening artisans, the need for strengthening the concept of the cottage industry, the need for strengthening khadi, the need for strengthening textile. All this he had envisaged, and in just over 2.5 years that he was minister, he either initiated the process or he completed some of them, but definitely, certainly, he laid a solid foundation, he laid a solid vision for India's industrialization. As he was one of the most successful finance ministers in Bengal, so was he one of the most successful industry ministers of India in those early days when a new direction was to be given. It was in April 1950 that Dr. Mukherjee finally resigned from the central cabinet. And you must know this, it is well known that he resigned in protest against the Nehru-Liaquat Pact, which he said would fail because while India would protect her minorities, Pakistan would go back on her word to protect minorities who stayed back in Pakistan. And I must urge all of you to read Dr. Mukherjee's historic resignation letter, where he says that, and very interestingly, he had clearly envisaged how the Bengali Hindus in eastern Pakistan would be an oppressed section of the population, would face oppression, would face persecution, would face discrimination, and would keep coming away to India. He had made this demand that he had clearly seen that Pakistan would never keep its word and that India would keep hers. He had clearly foreseen that the pact would fail, and he had also argued for the need to make provision for those refugees who came away persecuted from Pakistan to India. So friends, when last December the Citizenship Amendment Bill was passed, finally turned into an act, it was again a historic circle coming full. It was a circle which started with the resignation of Dr. Mukherjee. He never thought what would he gain by resigning from the cabinet. He never thought what would he gain by giving up his position as a minister. It was on principle, because at the time of partition, the Indian leaders had given their pledge to the minorities, to the Hindus who had stayed back in Pakistan, that they would be protected, they would be looked after, and if ever a situation arose when they would face persecution and they were unable to stay back in the land of their ancestors, India would either come to their protection, or India would ensure that if they came to India, they would have a life of equal opportunity and dignity as any other Indian. It is on this principle that Dr. Mukherjee resigned, because he reminded Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, he reminded the entire Congress leadership that one cannot go back on the word given to the minorities of Pakistan. And he says very clearly, the establishment of a homogeneous Islamic state is Pakistan's creed. Pakistan had declared itself an Islamic state, and in an Islamic state, those who don't profess Islam are treated as second-class citizens and face persecution. Pakistan's Islamic state is Pakistan's creed, Dr. Mukherjee said in his resignation statement on the floor of Parliament on 19th April 1950. And a planned extermination of Hindus and Sikhs and expropriation of their properties constitute its settled policy. As a result of this policy, life for the minorities in Pakistan has become nasty, brutish, and short. Let us not be forgetful of the lessons of history. We will do so at our own peril. I am not talking of bygone times, but if anyone analyzes the course of events in Pakistan since its creation, it will be manifest that there is no honorable place for Hindus within that state. The problem is not communal, it is essentially political. He was very clear. He says that this is not going to end here. And we see that despite the signing of the Nehru Liaquat Pact by August 1950, and by December 1950, a large exodus of Hindus were driven out, large population of Hindus were driven out of Pakistan. And we see how over the years Dr. Mukherjee's prophecy came true. And we see that all the arguments, in fact, everyone at that point of time, most of the Congress leaders, even though they could not speak, supported Dr. Mukherjee. But he resigned from the cabinet, and he resigned on this point that he would go out and mobilize public opinion. People were with him in protection of the Hindus in Pakistan and in protection of refugees, of those Hindus who became refugees and came away to India. So this entire citizenship narrative debate, the entire CAA debate is in the context of that. It's in that historic backdrop that we need to see the entire CAA debate. And when Prime Minister Modi spoke about it, when he referred to many on the floor of the House, he was exactly making those very same historic points which Dr. Mukherjee had made 69 years ago in support of the minorities of Pakistan. He gave up his ministership so that the minorities in Pakistan could be protected, and so that the Bengali Hindus who came away as refugees to West Bengal could also be given a new lease of life and a new future. The next phase in Dr. Mukherjee's life, friends, is the formation of the Bharatiya Jana Sangh. So the question is, had Dr. Mukherjee not been there, what would have happened? Had Dr. Mukherjee not been there, the Bharatiya Jana Sangh wouldn't have been formed. And had the Bharatiya Jana Sangh not been formed, we would never have seen the likes of Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay. And let me tell you here that Guruji Golwalkar, Sri Guruji Golwalkar and Dr. Mukherjee had a very unique interaction and relationship. Dr. Mukherjee in 1940 had met Param Pujaniya Dr. Hegdewarji, and in 1940 that was the last meeting practically that Dr. Hegdewarji had with any public figure, and they had a meeting. Dr. Hegdewarji was already unwell, he was to pass away within a few weeks. He was laid up in bed. They had a conversation, and one of the words that Dr. Hegdewarji told him, one of the sentences, one of the advice, one of the direction that he gave Dr. Mukherjee was, instill the sense of one nationhood in the minds of our people. That alone will lead us to future greatness and unity. And after resignation from the central cabinet, when Dr. Mukherjee was without a party, but he was very clear that the Nehruvian hegemony had to be challenged, that a new direction had to be given to Indian politics, that Free India had to have a new vision and direction of its march, which would be in tune with Bharatiyata, with Indian needs, with Indian conditions, which would be inspired by India's great past and at the same time look forward to a great future. It was during his meetings with Sri Guruji that gradually this idea and thought of forming a political party came up, and Sri Guruji gave him some of the Sangh's best pracharaks, Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay among them, people like leaders like Sundar Singh Bhandari and many others of that period, who were given to Dr. Mukherjee in order to help him organize the Bharatiya Jana Sangh. And Sri Guruji then withdrew into completely focusing on creating the Sangh. So we see that Dr. Mukherjee had a unique relationship with Gandhiji, and he had a unique relationship with Sri Guruji, and it was through Sri Guruji's inspiration by his, through his vision, that Dr. Mukherjee got, in a sense, one can say, a new lease of political life, and that would prove to be a game changer in the political history of independent India. The Janasangh got 3 seats in the first general elections in 1952, and out of those, one of the seats was Dr. Mukherjee's from Kolkata South, and just with 3 seats, and with it received just enough percentage of votes for it to become a national party, Dr. Mukherjee became one of the most vocal and the most acceptable voice of the opposition in Free India's first Lok Sabha. There are few books on his parliamentary acumen, on his parliamentary performance. Quintessential Democrat, quintessential parliamentarian, with everything with facts, figures in his command. And Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay ji describes him in a wonderful article written during Dr. Mukherjee's lifetime as to how, when he spoke in parliament, there was pin drop silence. The visitors' gallery was fully packed and people came to listen to him. He was never acerbic, he was never personal, and he had always facts, figures, statistics, arguments at his fingertips, marshalling them with aplomb, inspiring even the opposition benches, even the treasury benches, the Congress benches, most of whom agreed with what he said, but obviously could not say it for political reasons. This was his performance as a parliamentarian. We come to the last phase of his life, and again the question, had Dr. Mukherjee not been there, what would have happened? Had Dr. Mukherjee not been there, Kashmir wouldn't have been with India. Kashmir would have gone away long ago into the clutches of a terror-hungry jihadi Pakistan. Dr. Mukherjee saw this very clearly, and he saw it early on, that Pakistan, that Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir had to be completely integrated with India in order to ensure that India's unity was protected, that India was safe, and that her independence was protected. He undertook a long correspondence with Nehru and Sheikh Abdullah. Let us not be under the impression that he jumped into the debate and he jumped into the movement, he didn't. He took a very measured, as a Democrat, as a constitutionalist, he took a very measured approach. He started a correspondence with Sheikh Abdullah and Nehru, trying to explain to them why the Praja Parishad movement must not be oppressed. Series of letters in which Dr. Mukherjee explained why complete integration of Jammu and Kashmir with India, abrogation of Article 370 was needed. It was needed because of equal opportunity. It was needed because there should be no discrimination. It was needed because the Constitution of India needed to be equally applied to all parts, corners, and portions of India. And it is appalling to see that Dr. Mukherjee is called communal, that he is often regarded as somebody who tried to break the Constitution. It is laughable, because so that the Constitution of India's writ runs across India, he undertook this entire movement for the integration of Kashmir. And we see that across the country at that point of time, there was a huge public opinion generated in his support. And of course, there are questions of history which remain unanswered, that if one required a permit in those days to enter Jammu and Kashmir, why was Dr. Mukherjee allowed to enter Kashmir? Why was he allowed to cross the border and enter Kashmir? If he didn't have a permit, why was he not stopped at the border itself? Why was he allowed to enter and then arrested? These are questions that history will continue to ask, and of the Congress, of the Congress's first family, of Nehru, and of the entire Congress leadership. He was arrested because, and His stated objective of visiting Jammu and Kashmir was to see for himself the situation on the ground. When both Nehru and Sheikh Abdullah did not listen to him, he even undertook a trip before that to Kashmir in order to expressly meet Sheikh Abdullah, speak to him. Even then, when he was not heeded, he decided to undertake a trip to see for himself. He was arrested. In a cramped jeep, he was driven for 12 hours. He had already suffered a heart attack in 1945. And he was driven for 12 hours at an altitude, taken to Srinagar, kept in a cramped, dilapidated cottage. I visited the spot in Srinagar, a lonely, secluded spot in those days in the outskirts of the town. He was kept in that secluded spot with no doctors to attend him, with no one to look after him properly, with no proper food, with all his mails being intercepted, with no telephone facilities. A former union minister who was a minister in the cabinet of Free India was imprisoned by his erstwhile colleagues and was kept as a prisoner of India's Swadeshi independent government. And in his last days, as his health started deteriorating, neither did he get the requisite medical attention, neither did he allow his zeal, his commitment for India's unity to flag once, never once. When he suffered another heart attack, he was walked, not even in a stretcher, not in an ambulance. I have seen those steps that he probably had taken. I've seen that entire area, the difficult terrain. He was made to sit in a taxi and taken to the Srinagar Civil Hospital, where he was kept in a general ward. And then administering that injection, that mysterious administering of the penicillin injection. You're all doctors. I have his entire case history. Many have analyzed and made a study of his case history. They said he had dry pleurisy. He was admitted to a gynecological ward. They said he had dry pleurisy. And he was just admitted there. He was a heart patient, so to say, having suffered one heart attack. He kept complaining of pain in the leg. They say it was thrombosis. And then he was administered penicillin, to which he expressly told the nurse, the doctor administering him, that he is allergic to this and that this should not be administered. For strange reason, he was not heard. They did not listen to him. Dr. B.C. Roy wanted to undertake a thorough investigation. Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee's mother wrote to Nehru calling for an inquiry. A large number of parliamentarians and leaders, starting from Jayaprakash Narayan to others, demanded an inquiry into his death, but Nehru refused. He said he was satisfied that everything, that Dr. Mukherjee was well taken care of, and therefore there was no need for an inquiry. So Free India's first government denied to undertake an inquiry into the death of its former minister and of a national leader, of a sitting member of parliament of the stature of Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee. Dr. B.C. Roy was not allowed to undertake a visit. Dr. B.C. Roy was not allowed to study the medical reports. Others, understanding his condition, have made conjectures and come out with his health condition. But perhaps some of you may one day take up this and actually try and tell us what ailed Dr. Mukherjee and how he died and what is it that was administered to him. This was the end of a great life. It was the end of a great life. It was a sudden and mysterious end. It was an asphyxiating end to a towering life. And why? Why such an end? It was because he wanted India to be protected, India to be united, India to be free, and India to be integrated. His body was taken out from the back door directly into the aerodrome and was flown from Srinagar with a brief stopover in Kanpur to Kolkata. It was not allowed to be brought to Delhi. In the 1940s, in one of his diary entries, Dr. Mukherjee had written once when he was unwell, the kind of end that he wants for himself. He had said that let my end be a warring end in search for the truth. When the end comes, I want such an end. This is what he had written. And I think that was a fitting end. But why it was a fitting end? It was a warring end. And it was an end when he was in his last and most intense phase in his search after truth, the truth of India's freedom, the truth of India's unity and independence. Why the Congress government, why Nehru's government allowed him to be arrested? Why Nehru's government allowed him to be detained? Why Nehru's government and Sheikh Abdullah's government did not administer him his medical needs, kept him in a confinement which was extremely excruciating. Why did Nehru even visited Srinagar when Dr. Mukherjee was in detention? Nehru did not visit him once, did not even as much as speak to him. Why did they do this? For what is something which history continues to answer. But we lost one of the most towering and promising leaders of free India. And through his sacrifice, through giving himself up, Dr. Mukherjee ensured that Kashmir and Jammu and Kashmir forever remained with India. And it was after his death that the situation started taking a turn, and till 2019, 5th August, when Article 370 was abrogated, when all discrimination was removed, and it was the flag of free India, the tricolor, which once again flew on the Secretariat of Jammu and Kashmir government in Srinagar. And this is exactly what Dr. Mukherjee had said, that it would be the flag of free India, one flag which will fly across India, without any discrimination, without any parallel. When once Sheikh Abdullah told him in Parliament, we shall also give adequate respect to the Indian flag. Don't worry, it will be the Jammu and Kashmir flag which will fly and the Indian flag. Dr. Mukherjee reminded him, excuse me, it is not a question of parity. It is not a question of 50-50. As far as the flag of India is concerned, as far as the Constitution of India is concerned, it is one flag, one constitution. एक देश में दो विधान, दो निशान, दो प्रधान नहीं चलेंगे. This was Dr. Mukherjee's war cry during those days. Friends, I shall just end in a few minutes with Dr. Mukherjee's contemporary relevance. As long as India, there are forces which wish to break apart India's unity. As long as there are forces within India and there are forces externally who wish to decimate and destroy India's integrity, who wish to compromise India's freedom, who wish to compromise India's independence, Dr. Mukherjee's legacy's relevance shall continue to shine, and he shall continue to be relevant. What is this noise of Azadi that we sometimes hear? Azadi from whom? Azadi by whom? Azadi for whom? These are the nefarious slogans that even then in those days Dr. Mukherjee had opposed, even as a prisoner in detention in Kashmir. Even in his days in the Srinagar Civil Hospital, when he was there lying in suffering, he would hear the Azadi slogans being given by Sheikh Abdullah's National Conference cadres and their supporters, supported by Pakistan on the streets of Srinagar. And even then, Dr. Mukherjee had risen up to oppose that demand for Azadi. It is only one Azadi, and that is the independence of India, which was achieved in 1947, that has to be preserved at all cost. And therefore, as long as the fight against those who want to compromise India's freedom remains, Dr. Mukherjee's legacy continues to be relevant. Now coming to his relevance in West Bengal. Friends, I think it is time that we need to ask ourselves today, why was West Bengal created? What was the raison d'etre of the creation of West Bengal? What was Dr. Mukherjee's vision behind the creation of West Bengal? What had he envisaged by creating West Bengal? As long as that question faces us, Dr. Mukherjee shall continue to be relevant. West Bengal's raison d'etre is now becoming extremely important. It is a very crucial time for West Bengal. For whom was West Bengal created? Why was West Bengal saved? Why was West Bengal retained in India? And what role does West Bengal have to play in the future? Why is West Bengal a symbol in the vision of Dr. Mukherjee of India's integration? And why can West Bengal never grow apart from India? And why must never a thought, a line, a narrative that West Bengal is separate from India be ever given support in West Bengal today? Therefore, I want to remind you of this word of Dr. Mukherjee, which continues to be extremely relevant for West Bengal today also. 19th March 1947, when he had said that, is it a crime on our part to demand that we must have our own territory where we can live as free men and build up our own culture, our own social and economic life in accordance with our best tradition? I think this is the core of why West Bengal was created. He had a great vision for West Bengal. He wished West Bengal to be at the forefront of industry, at the forefront of scientific research, at the forefront of education. It was at his behest that the Institute of Nuclear Physics was founded in Kolkata. It was at his behest that many initiatives were taken so that Bengal continues, even a partition-ridden Bengal again assumes her rightful place in the Union of Indian States. I think that is the contemporary relevance of Dr. Mukherjee today. And if we look at India's unity and the need to protect India's unity and freedom, Dr. Mukherjee's relevance shall continue to be immortal. If we look at the raison d'etre of West Bengal, if we look back at in 70 years what has West Bengal achieved, and if we look at what Shyama Prasad Mukherjee wanted West Bengal to be, his legacy shall continue to beckon us and shall continue to be relevant. And therefore, friends, I think we are at a very crucial time when we need to think, being in West Bengal, what is it we want this state to become? What is it that we envisage for the people of this state? And how, as Prime Minister Modi has given his vision of Purvodaya, rise of the East, where Prime Minister Modi says that he wishes that the eastern portion of India develops equally, if not more, than the western portion. All these years, the eastern portion has been neglected. It has faced neglect. Historically, it has faced neglect. If the vision of Prime Minister Modi's Purvodaya is to be realized, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee's legacy has to inspire us. It is in his legacy, in his vision, that the key to Purvodaya, that the key to West Bengal becoming a dominant state once more, a front-ranking state once more, a powerhouse, an engine of growth in the region once more. If that is what we envisage, and that is the vision of Purvodaya, then Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, his life, his times, his legacy is and continues to remain our surest and most unfailing guide and lighthouse. I want to thank you once again. I really want to thank Dr. Saurabh Jha. I want to thank all the office bearers of the NMO West Bengal chapter for having invited me, for having patiently listened to me, and for having given me this opportunity to again live very intensely such an inspiring life as Dr. Mukherjee's. Let us all become lights unto ourselves. Let us discover the energy within us, and with that energy, let us pledge to take his vision. Let us pledge to take forward his vision of a great West Bengal, of a great India, of a new India, of India first ahead. Thank you so much. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.